Discovery Hut. Discovery Hut is located in Antarctica, close to McMurdoch Sound, which, as we have previously pointed out, is a really cool-looking place that you really do not ever want to visit. It was built by the party of explorer Robert Falcon Scott during the Discovery Expedition of 1901 to 1904, which was the second time anyone had ever tried to explore the region, and the first time in 60 years. If the hut looks like it's in pretty good shape for being that old, it may be because it is pretty much frozen solid. Inside this incredibly drafty little hut, that sits in one of the coldest regions on the planet, you'll find functionally useless equipment, 90-plus-year-old stores of seal carcasses, meat and blubber, snow, ice and despair. The hut has served no real purpose for decades upon decades, and probably would have been completely lost to decay and neglect long ago if it didn't sit in the middle of a deep freeze. Anderlecht Veterinary School. The last remaining unrenovated building out of the 19 that used to make up a veterinary complex in Anderlecht, Brussels, has stood deserted since the 90s. We're thinking it remains unrenovated because crews are just straight up terrified to even go near this place. Its deserted, crumbling halls lead to rooms that are each full of more horrifying stuff than the last. Old, hand-blown bottles of questionable fluids, syringes and other old, rusty medical equipment, and that's just the beginning. The main attractions are the animal heads and brains and assorted parts stuffed into jars throughout the building, which has come to appropriately be called the horror labs. Some parts are recognizable, some are not. Some are jammed together into larger jars. Some are sewn together, and we absolutely do not want to know why. This is allegedly a fairly popular urban exploration destination, although anyone who wants to take a day trip to the horror labs is made of sterner stuff than we are. In fact, we think it's time to get started on our list of the 10 cutest kittens ever photographed, so we can get some sleep tonight. The domes. Most locals don't know who built these giant, concrete, saucer-shaped domes out in the middle of the Arizona desert, or why. While the truth is pretty mundane. Visitors to the site are known to come down with a case of the willies in about 4 seconds. The extreme neglect, oddness of the architecture and the vibe of the place as the sun goes down combine to give one a healthy sense of unease. While these may look like 50s era flying saucer replicas, they were in fact built in 1982, by an electronics company. Their weird design was supposed to assist with insulation, and be cheap to construct. The company failed in 1983, and contaminated groundwater was found at the site shortly thereafter, with cleanup not exactly a priority for the now bank-owned properties. New owners acquired the site in 2006, and there it still sits spooky, deserted and forever raising the question, who paid money for these? Holy Land USA. Holy Land USA was once an 18-acre theme park in Waterbury, Connecticut, that at its peak in the 1960s and 70s, saw upwards of 40,000 visitors per year. It was closed for renovation in 1984. Its owner, John Greco, died in 1986. And nobody has been sure what to do with it since. The property has been watched over by a group of nuns in the intervening decades, while it deteriorates more and more, and just gets more and more disturbing. As if the crumbling statues, dark and still structures, and obvious vandalism don't get your "let's get the hell out of here" meter in the red, there's also the fact that a teenager was murdered on these deserted grounds in 2010. While police reports have shown instances of trespassing dropping, that really just means there are fewer people around, making the place even more isolated and terrifying. Six Flags New Orleans. The New Orleans amusement park Jazzland opened in 2000, and the lease was purchased by Six Flags in 2002. The park was upgraded a year later, and renamed Six Flags New Orleans. with a Mardi Gras-themed area, and a respectable collection of rides and coasters. In 2005, a storm struck the area, a big one. You may have heard about it. Long story short, the wreck of this once merry place has sat deserted for many years since Katrina struck. It is now owned by the city with tentative plans to put a mall in its place, but if you're willing to risk an arrest for trespassing, it can serve as a hell of a creepy urban exploration outing. Just ask the guys who took these pictures.